Wow. I think we've touched something that feels really powerful. We're at our max of 100 people unless we pay to go for more. Rashawn, what are we doing about that so people know? I think in the past
they can go to YouTube. There's already 20 people there, 23 now. So if
okay.
they're going to YouTube, and
Okay.
um, yeah, um, they can also write in the chat questions and things like that as well.
Oh, great.
I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
maybe,
Great to have
or
live
yeah,
streams. So all of the embodied dialogues are on my YouTube channel. And if you sign up and you can't come, just for everybody who's not here live right now to know, you can always find them on my YouTube channel. But you also will get an email, I believe. Rashawn will send out an email if you sign up. So welcome everyone. It could maybe mute, everybody mute because we can hear something in the background. Um, and a special welcome if you haven't been with us before. Everybody, yeah. And so we do these embodied dialogue series for free, usually about once a month, sometimes a little bit more. Lately, I've been having a few specials. So this is a special where we've allowed for 2 hours for all of us to be here together with some wonderful guests that I've invited to share in this really, I think, really needed conversation, dialogue about different ways of being with addiction, thinking about addiction, understanding it conceptually, and also then how to offer people ways of healing. And so I want to start because a lot of you are new or less familiar with the felt sense polyvagal model of understanding addiction, to share a little bit about the model and how, from a polyvagal lens, we really have, I think, reconceptualized how we understand not only addiction, but also trauma response, other trauma responses like dissociation. So I'm going to do that in a PowerPoint for probably about 10 minutes or so. And then we'll come back and I'm going to spotlight my wonderful guest, Ann Dowsett Johnston, who's a dear friend and also a focusing trainer, and also has her own history with 12-step and writing a best-selling book called Drink. And Robert Ragucci and Elizabeth Matoy. Elizabeth, how do you say your last name?
Moitoza.
Moitoza. I always wonder about that, so I'm glad I've got it. Elizabeth Moitoza, who are both Felt Sense Polyvagal Model facilitators, so they teach with me. They're both in their own right very seasoned trauma and addiction therapists. And Patrick McTeer, who is the, shall we say, creator of the Berlin Friendly Circle. I went and spoke to the group. This is a wonderful group, and I'm so excited to have you here, Patrick, because you really represent for me a path into a way of beginning to really dialogue with the 12-step tradition and how to bring this conversation together in a safe way. So that because we all can have very intense, passionate, fired up feelings about this subject. And fired up's great because it's still got some nice grounded energy there, but we don't want to fly into fight, because that doesn't help anybody. So this space is about really honoring all of the ways in which people find themselves able to get through the night and all of the ways that people are able to heal. And then to be able to cross that, to ask questions about it. Gendlin would say, how do we cross this with that? So we don't reduce it in our comparing, we add to it. And that's what I really want us to be able to do today. Okay, so I'm going to start with sharing. Some of you will be familiar with this, and some of you won't. It'll be new. So I started my journey into the field of working with trauma and self-harm and addiction about 45 years ago now. So I've been doing this work for a long time. And I started fresh out of grad school working at a hospital outside of Toronto, which is my hometown. I'm Canadian. And I was handed the job of running a group for women, most of them pretty young women, who were incest survivors. So if you just take that in for a moment, it was completely overwhelming for me. And it was an incredible experience. The basis of everything I learned that I'm sharing with you comes from what I learned the beginning in this group with these young women. And that's because I really rejected the traditional pathologizing model. It didn't make any sense to me what they were telling us, that these women had borderline personality disorder, they were sick, and they were pumped full of lots of medication. Not that I'm against medication, but the way that they were pumped full of medication right away, hospitalized, taking their clothes away, in hospital gowns. And the way I was seeing them was that they were victims of a crime. So it didn't make any sense to me that they were disordered. And what I've discovered through my journey is that I was right, and lots of us were right back then and still are, that there's another way of being able to understand what's going on in the body in trauma and addiction that doesn't make it a pathology. It actually makes it an adaptive feature of the nervous system of survival. So that's where we're going. The other way, of course, that these women were being treated, and lots of people in our society who are self-harming and really struggling with addiction, particularly drug and alcohol addiction, is that you end up in jail. And so either you're seen as sick and manipulative and masochistic, this borderline personality disorder was the way all of these women basically were being diagnosed. And sometimes they'd have like 6 or 7 diagnoses. So that really didn't make much sense either. And some of them, and some of the guys that I worked with over the years ended up in jail for various reasons. And so in our culture, we really still have this badness and sickness model. We really haven't sorted out how we feel about people who struggle to try to soothe themselves and to cope with life, and to cope and manage with overwhelming feelings that are uncomfortable and are suffering. We really are still so ambivalent about it. And our models today still reflect that. People still go to jail and they're still pathologized. And while it's better, I guess, to be seen as sick than to be seen as bad, I really think there's another way. And this is the way that I want us to be able to consider today and talk about and bring in and just explore, well, what about this other way of understanding all of this that has to do with the body? So I went searching to try to figure out another way that I could help these women to understand themselves. And what struck me when I was sitting with them and working with them was all of the intense response that was happening physically in their bodies. And you could see this. You could see what we now call the sympathetic flight-fight response of constriction and panic and whatever. And then I could also see the ways that they would shut down into what we now have named a dorsal vagal state of just trying to hibernate and survive. And back then in the feminist community, which is where I went to really try to get another perspective, we called this flooding and numbing. So we didn't translate it into the autonomic nervous system, most of us, because we didn't really know about it. It wasn't a reference point for most of us. But, Ellen Bass and Laura Davis wrote this amazing book way back in 1988 called The Courage to Heal. If you don't know it, I highly recommend it. It's as great now as it was then. And they say in this book, the problems survivors experience with their bodies, splitting and numbing and addictions, began as attempts to survive. So that's a polyvagal statement. That's talking about how behaviors like cutting the body, drinking massive amounts of alcohol, using drugs, ways of numbing the body and moving into this dorsal shutdown state are ways of adapting to an environment that feels threatening, because they help you to manage that overwhelm by going into numbing, or they help you to get out of that numbing place by moving up into sympathetic flight, fight, and high risk behaviors as a way of mobilizing out of that stuck place. Whoops, sorry, I just went the other way. So another wonderful book, as good now as it was then, is Judith Herman's book. Judith Herman is still around and speaking. This book that she wrote way back in the 1990s, I think, it's been since been edited, or new versions, called Trauma and Recovery. So Judith Herman was trained as a psychiatrist, so she had some medical training. And I think that's probably why she recognized what was happening in the autonomic nervous system, the part of the body that monitors how safe we are. So safety became, for her and for us as feminist therapists, the organizing principle, the organizing way that we understood what is going on for people when they become so dysregulated that they would do things like cut the body. Things that from a top-down perspective, when you don't understand bodies, you think is masochistic and attention-seeking. So Judith Herman says, abused children generally discover at some point that they can produce major, though temporary, alterations in their affective state by inducing autonomic crisis or extreme autonomic arousal, and that the feelings can be most effectively terminated by a major jolt to the body. The most dramatic method of achieving this result is through the deliberate infliction of injury. So here we see what's beginning to make sense. Herman goes on to say that while self-injury is the most spectacular soothing mechanism, children find many other ways to induce major alterations in affective states. Purging and vomiting, compulsive sexual behavior, compulsive risk-taking or exposure to danger, and the use of psychoactive drugs become the vehicles by which abused children attempt to regulate their internal emotional states. So Judith Herman is connecting this to the autonomic nervous system, that place in the body through the ventral vagus where we're monitoring how safe we are. And when we don't feel safe, the body shifts into these dysregulated states to help us to adapt to the threat. And so these are all the behaviors that I was seeing in these young women. And yeah, from a top-down perspective, you wouldn't understand these behaviors other than to say they're weird. Like, what is that person doing? They must hate themselves. And it's attention seeking. I heard that a lot. And forming a relationship with the women in the group where I actually respected them and was curious about these behaviors was really seen as suspect. It's like, oh, you're crossing boundaries. You're getting too involved here. It's like we had to step back and really be very distant and frankly contemptuous often of these folks and their behaviors. So what I grew to really appreciate deeply was that it was really important to pause and listen to what's happening in the body. Because even though these young women didn't understand how cutting the body, for example, was helping them, or why they would go back to really unsafe sexual experiences, they knew that there was something that happened afterwards that brought help. And that was really intriguing to me. They knew on some level that, and maybe even unconsciously for sure, in terms of how the body's wisdom took them there, but there was something they kind of knew about this and yet didn't understand it, and then heard that they were hating themselves, or maybe some people felt some of that. But as we listened more and I continued into my journey, I began to really appreciate the wisdom of the body. So this model, a polyvagal model, is really about shifting paradigms. And that's not an easy thing for us folks to do. You know, one of the things that we really appreciate in terms of safety is predictability. It's having a sense of understanding how the world works and being able to position ourselves within all of that. And so to have a paradigm that works for you and makes sense for you. And that's a wonderful thing. But if we get too stuck in those paradigms, we lose the capacity to be able to play with them, to shift into different ways of understanding something, and holding some openness for that, and being really curious about, well, what would it be like if we did it like this? Or what if you think about it like that? And that's really the place where creativity happens. But we need to have enough safety in order to be able to play with that and to shift paradigms. And it's, I think, essential, really, especially in a world today where we're really being so incredibly challenged. And many of us are living in that real kind of trauma response. So we're wanting to move from bypassing the body and seeing these behaviors as maladaptive responses into really honoring body wisdom and seeing these behaviors as adaptive ways of coping when there isn't enough safety. And so the first place we have to be able to go to be able to do this is to pause. And pausing in the focusing world is part of where we start. And in fact, Mary Genlin, who was the wife and the first director of the Focusing Institute, the wife of Gene Genlin, the father of focusing and the felt sense, she called this the revolutionary pause. And I think she was really onto something here, because when we pause, we're able to start to feel into a deeper sense of experiencing both ourselves inside and the world around us. And if more of us were able to do that and to extend that pause, which is what focusing is, it would be revolutionary, because we would be shifting from a top-down model that denies the body into a model that integrates the body so that we end up with bottom-up and top-down. So we're not just advocating a bottom-up model. Of course, we love top-down stuff. We love theories and we love concepts. We write books and we think about things. But all of that needs to bring in the body and how bodies actually really work with the concepts that we're creating. And this was Genlin's brilliance, really. So Genlin did this, a lot of research with Carl Rogers, a famous psychologist in the States that probably lots of you know. And they discovered through interviewing clients and therapists that both had really positive outcomes in the therapy process. People were able to make significant changes in their lives. That people who were able to do this were folks who were, surprise, surprise, connected to their bodies. People who were integrated. People who were able to pause and not be afraid because they had enough safety to be able to connect inside, to clear some space. It's the first step of focusing, which is a mindfulness practice that, you know, takes time to learn how to do this. to really be able to clear out all the stuff that gets in the way. It's a wonderful ventral practice to be able to offer to people, to clients, to children, to friends, to learn how to be able to do that. It's huge. And it's something that we can't do when we're struggling in that addictive place. And then we go into focusing, which is a different process altogether, really. Because here we're inviting one issue in our lives, not 10, but one, to come in and to befriend it, and to befriend something that feels uncomfortable. So again, that's a real paradigm shift, right? We don't befriend uncomfortable things. And, you know, lots of people who are highly sensitive people, beautiful people that feel things really deeply, become addicted because they feel things deeply, and we're taught not to feel those deep things if they're uncomfortable. Even if they're comfortable, there's a kind of a, you know, don't go too intensely into life. Just keep everything at a nice kind of kind of numb, nice, pleasant way of being in the world. And of course, this doesn't work. And people start expressing what's happening inside. But if it's not welcomed, then it comes out in a way that is misunderstood, and people end up getting into trouble, suffering a lot. So here we're really inviting people to shift paradigms and to welcome what's uncomfortable and to learn how to be with it in your body. And it's important to remember that focusing is actually, it's a natural process in the body. Remember, the people that they were studying in this research project, they didn't know they were focusing. They discovered a natural process, a way in which bodies are designed to heal, body wisdom. And we miss all of this when we only live in a top-down world. We miss it because we don't pause and pay attention and listen without bringing in all of our pathologizing or any kind of notions, just to freely listen to what's happening for another person. And so we do this in a way that is careful, right? We invite something to come in. Often you'll notice, even right now, you might notice there's something in there that feels a bit tight or constricted or kind of heavy and lump and deadened. And we work with those places. And we work on really paying attention, getting a handle for that place, something that really helps to capture the essence of what that is. And we can also do this with really resourcing places. We can find a felt sense of a place that feels really solid and grounded. And we do this a lot as part of the practices when we're working with trauma and addiction. Looking for a resource of a place that feels good, finding where you carry that in your body, and then being able to get a handle for that and resonate that. So again, we do this in partnerships, which is similar in some ways to the 12-step movement, where you work in pairs often. We work in pairs and we work in groups. We have a lot of that in common. And so your partner resonates that handle back to you. And you really work to get the right fit for that. And when that happens, it feels really good. And often it feels there's a little shift that comes in the body there. And then sometimes your partner will ask into all of that to kind of find out more about all of it. And you stay with that. And then eventually it kind of moves through the body. Sometimes a big kind of shift will happen. Nothing's changed in terms of the problem or the issue, but how you are in relationship with it changes profoundly. You've welcomed what was uncomfortable. And some really good energy comes in terms of how to be with it and how to carry forward. And so that felt shift is profound, and it is what Jenlin called the motor of change. We use body cards when we work with people. I think this is one of the most popular things about the way that we work together. And this is a body card of a person who was in my certificate class with the Polyvagal Institute. She does a lot of work with climate change, and you can see the heaviness and the grief in her belly around what's happening. And in her focusing process with her partner, she's able to access some of that really good ventral energy. And it comes into the body, and you can see how her body really is able to welcome this breath of love, she calls it. And so we focus in partnerships, in dyads. Sometimes we work in threes. And when I was creating the felt sense polyvagal model, I looked around for the kind of the latest way of really understanding addiction that brings in neuroplasticity. And, you know, I found Mark Lewis's work. Mark lives in Toronto. He's a friend. The Biology of Desire, wonderful book. Mark is such a beautiful writer. And in there, he says, you know, addiction can therefore be seen as a developmental cascade, often foreshadowed by difficulties in childhood, always boosted by the narrowing of perspective, with recurrent cycles of acquisition and loss. And like other developmental outcomes, addiction isn't easy to reverse because it rides on the restructuring of the brain. Like other developmental outcomes, it arises from neuroplasticity, but its net effect is a reduction of further plasticity, at least for a while. Addiction is a habit, which, like many other habits, gets entrenched through a decrease in self-control. So here he's giving us this new way of understanding addiction through neuroplasticity, that the brain is changing all the time. But what happens in addiction is that when you travel down the same route over and over and over and over and over again, like we do in addiction, it actually then becomes a rut. And we call this the plastic paradox. So Mark has a wonderful way of making areas of the brain that are involved in addiction easier to understand. And we won't go into it now, but the main thing I want to highlight here is that the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex on the left side, he names this the bridge of the ship. So this is the prefrontal cortex, the executive functioning part of the brain. And what happens in addiction is that we lose that connection, and the bridge of the ship starts to go silent, like nobody's home. Not always, but it starts to lose that capacity to be able to delay gratification, to hold on to your own moral compass. You know, when you're in survival mode, moral compass doesn't matter. Survival matters. And that's why good people can do bad things and then not believe they could do them afterwards. So it isn't because people are bad or sick. It's that the brain is functioning in this way that is blocking and hampering executive functioning. And this is incredibly liberating when you explain this to people. I found it to be the most helpful way of working with shame, is to really explain that your body is just doing what bodies are designed to do instinctively, is to go into that addictive mode to shift states. So here's the plastic paradox, is that you wander down that neural pathway over and over and over again of eating or masturbating or drinking a lot or whatever that is that you're doing. And eventually it becomes a rut, literally in the brain. And then as you try to get out of it, you're digging in deeper and deeper and deeper. And you can't get out of it just in the head. Something else has to help, right? The good news is that we can move and shift because of neuroplasticity. The more you then start to practice these ways of moving inside, connecting with grounding and the ventral branch of the vagus, the more you're moving out of the rut. So the way that we define addiction is very simple here. We just say that it's something that helps you in the short term, It hurts you in the long term, and you can't stop doing it. So we don't get into arguing with people about whether they have addictions or not, or whether it's just self-harm, but it's not, none of that. It's up to each person to reckon with that and to see if that simple definition resonates for you. And it doesn't matter what it is. It's far beyond drugs and alcohol. People have all kinds of powerful behavioral addictions. Bodies are smart. They know how to survive. So this is the model that we made it together in my group room over many years of working with clients and with students. And we call it the 7Fs. It's a model of the autonomic nervous system. We just called it that to make it simple so people could understand it and relate to it. And it's actually really fun to introduce to kids, stick it on the fridge and help them to begin to learn about their nervous system and about felt sensing. And so we'll just go through those quickly. So this is the ventral branch of the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve runs from down below above the diaphragm, below the diaphragm, right up into the stem of the brain stem, and carries up all this information. Like 80% of the information that comes from the vagus nerve comes about the body. Information that's coming about what's happening in our organs. And that information is then read unconsciously and helps us to survive. So if we feel present and safe, we call this flock, because we're all here together, just like we are right now, coming together, socially engaged when we feel safe. When we don't feel enough safety, we lose connection with that part of the vagus nerve, which is above the diaphragm and up through into the face, and what Steve Porges calls the social engagement system. So when I feel safe, I can smile at Robert, and Robert will smile back at me, and that feels good, right? And smile, I can see you guys there. So that you can see, I'm not thinking, oh, I should smile. My body smiles because it feels good to be connected to other people when we feel safe. When we don't feel safe, it doesn't feel good to be connected to other people. It feels threatening. So if I don't perceive enough safety, my body will shift into a sympathetic state of flight, fight. And here I'm tense, my muscles are tense. I'm living in this highly activated and mobilized state. Very uncomfortable. This is the branch of the vagus nerve that Steve Porges named as the dorsal branch. And this was a huge thing when he did this. I know I'm taking more time, but I want to really explain this for Robert's nodding. Okay, thank you. To people that are new. So this is really Steve Porges' contribution to the world, to trauma and addiction. And it's huge. And that's why it's taken off, because it resonates so much with those of us that were doing trauma and addiction work. Because before this, in the autonomic nervous system, we didn't have a way of explaining dissociation. Imagine. I mean, dissociation, numbing, is such a powerful part of how we keep ourselves safe. When there isn't enough ventral flock energy, then it makes sense that we're going to go into mobilizing to try to either get out of there or fight back. If neither of those strategies work, the body is so smart, it just goes to shutting down in order to keep us safe. So what we say when we understand the nervous system is that these responses are adaptive in maladaptive environments. It's not that people are maladaptive. The environment they're living in is maladaptive, and that then triggers these instinctual survival responses to numbing and shutting down to keep yourself safe. And imagine if you were one of those young women in my incest group, how grateful you would be that your body knew how to dissociate and shut down so that you didn't have to live through torture. So why are we calling this a disorder? This is not a disorder. It becomes a problem when there is enough safety in the body and the body is still responding in this old primitive way. That's true. And that's our job, is to help the body sometimes through top-down processing as well. There's a lot of psychoeducation in this model, right? To update. It's like, oh, it's not 15 years ago. Here I am now. Here I am now. And that then helps the body to be able to come into more regulation, particularly if the person is co-regulating with you, if they feel safe with you. Then we have these blended states, and we're thinking now more and more that we really live in blended states a lot of the time in the nervous system, because remember, the body isn't static. The body is constantly moving, breathing, changing, unconsciously noticing whether we're safe or not through neuroception, and then through interoception, connecting in with our own lived experience and how each of those processes is feeding into the other. And so in blended states, I made fun and fired up. Fun is Steve Porges calls this state play, and it's a combination of feeling safe and then also having some kind of adrenaline in there in the sympathetic, where you're mobilizing and you're moving around and playing, and there's a kind of excitement about play often, until it doesn't feel safe anymore. And then it shifts up into either fight or flight. And you can hear kids on the playground, all of a sudden they start to hit each other or cry and run home to get some ventral energy from mom or dad, hopefully, who's hanging out, or a sibling or a neighbor. And then the other one that I think is really important is fired up. And so fired up is this place where we feel safe in the body, but there's also some sympathetic adrenaline pumping there, because whatever we're doing, if we're, well, right now I feel fired up because I'm presenting this to you and I got to be on my game. I can't just go make myself a cup of coffee, and thinking about what I'm saying, and that I also feel passionate about it. And so it's a wonderful place to be. But if we lose the safety that's there, then we end up shifting again up into fight flight. And you can see this happening a lot now. People started to talk about it more with COVID, with vaccines. You know, you can't really talk about politics or whatever with family members who don't agree with you, because they're all going to shift into flight fight. And we're not able to stay in a fired up place about it. We're moving into dysregulation. So having that distinction, I think, is crucial in having any kind of argument or discussion, to be able to remember to, like, feel your feet on the floor, breathe into your belly. You know, this isn't about fighting and defending. It's about wanting to really be heard and feeling a lot of intense emotion, which is great. We should feel intense emotion. It's important. And then over here in flowing is this beautiful place of the dorsal branch of the vagus. So we're still often, and we feel safe. And so here we have practices like focusing practice, meditation, lots of wonderful ways that we can be, as Steve Porges calls it, being safe in the arms of a loved one. So it's just a gorgeous place to be. And then here we have fixate, freeze, and fawn. And this is the place of addictions. So we see here there's this blending of both flight, fight, and fold and collapse. And the idea is that, supposing, for example, you know, you come home from work and you're really in a sympathetic state. You know, your breathing is rapid. You can't settle yourself in your body. You drink a bottle of wine, and that will shift you down into a dorsal numbing state. It works very effectively. And when I explain to people who don't know about the nervous system, give them this example, most people who struggle with addiction will go, yeah, that's totally what happens to me. So there it is. That's the place where we can kind of relate to each other to say, well, yeah, that's what's going on in the autonomic nervous system. And then what happens is, if you're living too much in a dissociated state, which lots of the women in my group were, You can't stay, and this is very important to remember, you can't stay in either of those dysregulated states, sympathetic or dorsal, forever. The body would die. In sympathetic, it's too metabolically taxing. You think about what that feels like in the body. It can't sustain that forever. So it will go. It will find a way instinctively to shut down. Isn't that remarkable? That's body wisdom. And it will find whatever way it has to find. If you have enough safety in your body, it will find ways that are helpful, that bring you back into flow. Down in the bottom half of the model that's yellow, that depicts that capacity for felt sensing. If you don't perceive enough safety, your body will find a way to bring you into shutdown. And then again, you can't sustain shutdown because the heart rate lowers so much that you could die. And so those of us working, in healing and relationships, have to be really careful about where people are in the nervous system and how you can help them to move out of those places that are dangerous. And so one example of that would be cutting the body. So if you're in a dorsal state, and this is what a lot of the women in the group were doing, they would cut the body, they would see the blood, and they would say to me that it scared them. Well, fear is flight, fight. So that would shift them back, heart rate increases, they're not going to die. And so there's a lot of unconscious kind of intelligence going on here. And then the seventh one we called favoring others for survival. This is a big one. It's one that marginalized groups often live in a lot of the time. It's the one that Steve Porges calls appeasing. And the difference here is, yes, you're in this trauma feedback loop, the top half of the model, but at the same time, when we're in this role of appeasing to somebody or a group that we perceive has a lot of power over us, we are capable of having an awareness of what we're doing there. It's not the same as just collapsing into a dorsal state. And so favoring others for survival is an important one, to appreciate that we know we have this way in our nervous system of being able to say and do the right thing with people that we're afraid of, but at the same time know what we're doing in terms of just surviving. So we really emphasize how important it is to work in groups. And I think this is one of the places we can really cross with the 12-step movement. So we call this polyvagal informed focusing, and we use the nervous system to help people to understand where are you right now. And then we use our focusing practice to help us move into uncomfortable places, to work through trauma, and also to then access more ventral energy. This is the clinician version. I made this to kind of have everything into one place. And so addictions we see function as state regulation survival strategies that shift you back and forth in the nervous system in an attempt to survive, in an attempt to find safety when there isn't enough perceived safety. And so it becomes kind of important to appreciate that if you're working as a trauma therapist, you are really probably working with addiction, because how else are people keeping themselves alive if they're living in that trauma feedback loop? So it's very important to ask people specifically, how do you calm yourself down? How do you manage your behavior? And then you can help them to start to see, well, is that behavior helping you in the short term? Is it hurting you in the long term? And can you stop? Even you might be able to stop for a while if you're binging, but if you're starting again or you're shifting to another behavior, then that's a problem, right? Sorry, guys. This thing is so sensitive. So we're working with these two embodied processes of neuroception, what's happening in the body, how safe do I feel in my body? And then also with interoception, that's the process of felt sensing. What am I sensing is around me? What's happening in my lived experience? And when we touch in and help people to learn these two skills, we've really got a very powerful model. We work a lot with titration. So when you become really skilled in focusing and working with the nervous system, you know how to ask certain questions to help people, say if they're in too much flight fight, to shift away from that and calm themselves down, or to come back into the room to feel their feet on the floor, or to find some good ventral energy. You can ask the question, how would it feel in your body without all of this? It's amazing how that question at the right moment can help a person feel this felt shift into the ventral vagal energy. And that felt shift in the autonomic nervous system is what I connected together with polyvagal theory, the felt sense in interoception with polyvagal theory in the nervous system. And here's an example of body cards when people are moving from this fixate freeze state into the ventral state. And some ideas about, what behaviors help you to shift states, what behaviors help you to soothe yourself, and when did you start them, and can you stop them? And so a lot of these, we just offer them up as ideas. One of those that is one that often, I put this actually in my newest book, because I think people would never identify counting patterns as an addictive behavior if they're not aware of what counting patterns can do for you. Of course, they can bring you into a nice dissociated state, a dorsal shutdown, in order to survive the dining room table when it's too scary to be present, for example. And then we help people. A lot of you might be familiar with Patrick Cairns' 3-circle practice, which I love. I took it and integrated the autonomic nervous system and felt sensing, the FSPM, into those 3 circles. And this becomes our roadmap for how we help people. And so we start with, this is just an example of someone starts with, in that inner circle, they're trying to reduce harm. So we work with a harm reduction model, which includes sobriety. And this person is working with, limiting to 2 desserts a week, not smoking weed, and not watching porn, and being really aware of how those things work. So typically, if they start by smoking weed, it's going to be a lot harder not to eat sweets and watch porn. So really being aware. And we build these circles over time. We can take weeks, months, years, depending on where a person is in their body and how safe they feel in their nervous system to be able to start the process. So we may start with the inner circle behaviors, and we may start at another place in the 4 circles. The second circle is the dysregulated states. So looking at things like loneliness is almost always there when we're struggling with addiction, fighting with your partner, systemic issues like racism, poverty, whatever it is that's activating you to go into that inner circle. The third one are the ventral practices that bring social engagement and flock into your life. And so oftentimes people don't have many of these. So we help them to build these over time. And a lot of folks like to start here when they're working with the circles. No, I need to kind of build up that 3rd circle before I can even think about going into the middle, into the inner one. Of course, makes a lot of sense. And the 4th circle, Robert Ragucci, who's here with us, said to me, we need a 4th circle, Jan. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, it's the deeper, amazing spiritual, these places of awe that we can come to. It's what Dan Siegel calls transpirational. experiences of meditation and drumming and dancing and chanting, a lot of practices that other cultures, other than white cultures, have really developed over time. And I think Patrick was sharing how singing is something that you're bringing into your group. And yes, it's like really these profound moments that deepen our connection with our experience of life, really. So we've got then in our focusing accountability partnerships, which Robert and Elizabeth are going to share with you in a minute, we're using these daily practices, incorporating neuroception, where am I? How safe do I feel in my body? And also introception, using the practice of focusing to work through difficult places, and the 4 circles. So you would be able to then predict. You could say to your partner one morning, you know, I'm looking at that second ring and I've got like some triggering stuff going on today at work. And what am I going to do to help myself? Instead of falling into that inner circle, I'm going to look at 3 and 4 and what are the things that I could do to help myself today? So it's quickly there for you. It's not something you feel lost about. You can look at it as a map. And this is an example of a body card of a person working through binge eating. And you can see in this body card the dorsal collapse, the blackness, and also, you know, this real sympathetic surge with the kind of orangey, bubbly feelings of then being able to binge and feel some sense of excitement, but then you see that the person crashes down into this sad place again. So there's no felt shift out of the trauma feedback loop in this session, which happens. In this session, there's a lovely shift that occurs from the fixate freeze place. You see the blackness of dorsal and that kind of orangey yellow of sympathetic. And then as her focusing partner, the week later, this is the next week, is with her down in that same kind of place again. The partner asks, and you can see in the middle of the body, what do you need? What does this place need here? And you ask the question not up here, but down into the body. And what comes is this flow place that's there down on the right, where her body took her back to a creek in the backyard of her house, where she would go when it was just horrible, unsafe, scary stuff was happening at home. She found this creek in the backyard. And it wasn't that she consciously thought about that. It was through introception. It was through the process of focusing that her body takes her back there, much like what happens in dreams. So we're moving away from the bad and sick paradigm. We're moving into this awareness of how bodies know how to survive. I think this is a beautiful image of a dorsal state. The person is clearly shrouded, and yet there's aliveness inside there. And into thriving, into that empowerment feedback loop at the bottom of the model that comes with lots of good connections, social engagement, feeling safe enough in the body. And this really does bring moments of real liberation for people. And that's why this work is so wonderful to do. People find that hard to believe. You don't burn out. You don't. No, this work is amazing because we're really helping a particular population in addiction that is so shamed in our culture. So shamed to be able to really lift from that burden, to say, oh, your body is just doing what all bodies are designed to do to survive. It's instinctual. And once we can help bring more safety there, the body will shift, the neural pathways change, and you can heal. So this is my first book where I outline the model, and I'm just bringing out this book in March 18th, which is 20 embodied practices that take you through the journey. And we'll be running groups. I'm going to come back now. We're going to be running groups with the Polyvagal Institute. We're 20-week groups where people go through the practices with me and 6 of the Felt Sense Polyvagal Model facilitators two of which are here and maybe more, I don't know. Elizabeth and Robert will be helping me with those groups. Rashawn, do you have a link for those groups? I think the sales page is up now on the Polyvagal Institute website. So if you're curious, check it out. I narrated an audiobook for that second book, the 20 Embodied Practices. So we'll have that as well to be able to move through the journey together. I'm really excited about that. We're making it a small group, just 36 people, the first time around in particular. And then once people have trained with me and they've gone through running the groups with me, then people like Robert and Elizabeth will be running the groups on their own through PVI and me in developing our community together. So that was more than a mouthful, but I wanted to go a little deeper because I think it's important to kind of situate where we are. And now can you spotlight Rashawn, me and Anne and Robert and Patrick and Elizabeth? And we're going to take some time to chat together in our group. And then feel free, please, to put questions and comments in the chat. And we'll come back to you in the big group like we always do in a little bit of time. There we are. Are we all here? Yeah. Hi. So let's start by just doing a little kind of hearing from each of you. Anne looks excited. Anne, do you want to share?
Sure. I found that so profound, and like you, I started my focusing journey in the late 1980s, and I'm a focusing trainer and psychotherapist. But what I really listened with today was my experience as someone who has had a severe addiction to alcohol. And I actually was vice principal of McGill University when, in terms of dislocation, in an attempt to regulate my emotional state. In a city, I had been a journalist for 40 years and a very well-respected journalist, and all of a sudden was in a city where I knew no one, in a job where I was lost, and I turned to alcohol to regulate my emotional state. A lot of trauma came up, and I was able to find a community in ultimately through 12-step that was enormously supportive and enormously profound in terms of having me fit in a way that I had been incredibly lost. Over time, not that long, within 3 years, I wrote my book on the pinking of the alcohol market, the shrinking gender gap in risky drinking, which was a breakthrough whistleblower book that came out in 2013, called Drink, the Intimate Relationship Between Women and Alcohol, and looked at why women are so likely to use alcohol to numb and comfort and decompress. And my book was a search, very much for what you're speaking of, Jan, in terms of the whole attempt to regulate women who still carry the very large burden of emotional hand-holding and raising families and so on and so forth, even though they go toe-to-toe in the workplace. So my book takes a hard look at that, and the whole adaptive way of coping that you speak of. So I feel very I was flooded with letters after the book came out, flooded with my TED Talk, which has 1.5 million views, and I went back to school to be a psychotherapist and help. But I also run something called Writing Your Recovery, which is a memoir writing course to help people use journaling and use writing their story to heal in community as well, women. So my efforts have been to create community,
Mhm.
create community, be it through writing, be it through shared experience through my book, to trying and break through the shame, to be frank, break through the shame and stigma.
And can you say something about your experiences a bit more? Because we've talked about this, about 12-step, the good and the bad,
Yeah.
and how learning about focusing has changed or impacted your ideas about healing from addiction.
Yeah, I was shocked. Two things happened to me in my 12-step community, which I really relied upon. I suffer from severe depression, and in my early 70s, I'm very comfortable talking about that. And I was told in no uncertain terms that I wasn't sober, even though I'm in my 17th year of recovery now, that I wasn't sober because I took an antidepressant. And so that was, that's a very complicated thing, but that was small compared to what really happened. My book came out in 2013, was named one of the top 10 books of the year by the Washington Post, got a lot of attention, and I was shunned by my home group of 12-step. Not by everybody, I will say generously, not by everybody, but people who, in whose homes I had felt very welcomed, would walk down the hall and not look at me anymore. And there was, even though I had not mentioned A by name, there was a real shunning of me. And so for a long time, I would go to online meetings in Ireland and other places where people didn't know me, didn't know the connection. And it was a tough journey. I was, under 5 years sober. And so I began to really explore and use my focusing background to ground myself and to find, through writing, some appreciation, understanding, and through you, Jan, appreciation and understanding of what community meant to me. I knew we healed through community, but I knew the community I had come to rely on wasn't working. So it was a very long, in the wilderness search.
Mhm.
And I have a very strong community now, and I'm very grateful, but it
Yeah, that's
was
a tough one.
shocking.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you, Anne, for sharing. Patrick, tell us about you and
Oh, yes. Hi, I'm Patrick. Yes, and Jen, first of all, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate that you're doing this, actually. I think it means a lot to a lot of people. And yeah, so, and really and truly, it all makes sense. I mean, when you talk about pausing in the felt sense, or Jensen's work and so on and so forth, I made some notes. I mean, it's exactly what we learn in 12-step, in the 11th step. I had a sponsee one time. He had a pair of dog paws put on the back of his fist because he got in trouble with smacking people in bar fight and ended up going to jail.
yeah.
So he would look at that every time, because that's something. I mean, I think that the 12 steps are a remarkably powerful modality. There's the 12 steps as a modality, then there's the 12-step meetings and the community, and I don't get the two mixed up, that's for sure. And
What do you mean? What do you mean by that, Patrick?
well, the 12-step meeting is like any meeting of where you get a group of people from the neighborhood, the PTA, it could happen, I mean, it just, when you get people together, uh, uh, it's somewhere in the book it says, like, we're people who wouldn't normally mix. But we do find, I mean, I was lucky, I suppose, where I come in, where I got sober I got sober in the Tenderloin in San Francisco back in 1989. It was during the AIDS epidemic, and those meetings were really special to me. I mean, I came into my first meeting. There was the guy next to me was drunk. He was causing a disturbance, but he wasn't thrown out of the meeting. He was actually. I'll never forget. There was a woman hugging him outside after the meeting, and he was crying on her shoulder, and she says, saying, "Keep coming back, honey. It'll be okay." So I felt a very warm, fuzzy feeling, and I've always had that really. And I certain if you go certain meetings, they all differ, but I think I came into a really loving and caring environment of AA, and I had a really good experiences in the program. But I did learn to differentiate between the program and the meetings, and I think it's really important. But yeah, so I mean, Anne, I'm really sorry the experience that you had. That shouldn't happen, obviously. You know, but I mean, I've had my issues with having to take the medication for depression too, and there is a great AA pamphlet called "Medications and Other Drugs." If anybody wants to talk to me about them, I tell them go read the pamphlet. Nobody can play doctor in here. But yeah, so and the other thing of outside issues and all of that, I always say in Friendly Circle Berlin, we bring the outside issues in, air them out, and talk about them. But what we've done with that group really is that we've separated it outside of the it's not under the auspices of any particular 12-step program, but open to all 12-step programs and open to anybody, in fact, whether they're in 12-step, whether they're not, whether they're in smart recovery, Dharma recovery, whether they're sober curious, California is sober, who cares, just come along and get some information. And
I love this, Patrick.
yeah,
I
and
love
we
this.
learn so much from each other. I would say that probably today, I mean, I was instrumental in getting it started with a group of us from AA, from a live meeting that I used to be part of in Berlin when I was living there. But it's grown and changed significantly over the last 5 years with the online presence, with the international, and especially I would say now there's been a huge influx of people from adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families. That's a wonderful group. I listened to somebody this morning. You'll hear these influencers and YouTube podcasters talk about 12-step and maybe a lot of in a negative way, but they're referencing AA that they maybe have never been to, or maybe have gone to a couple of meetings, got the wrong impression. ACA group, I think, I mean, I went to their annual conference in London last year, and I was blown away, by that group and what they bring to Friendly Circle, really the beauty of being in a room with all the different groups together is that you can hear something that will click with you, and then realize, well, that's my issue too. And so with that, that's one of the pluses of being in a group like ours. And I always say that we separated out from underneath the auspices of AA out of respect. I'm always very respectful of the AA traditions. I think they have their place and I think they're great. I think they've helped solidify that program and keep it alive all these years, and their 12 concepts and all of that. I think I'm all for that. I'm all for singleness of purpose. We have a Sunday AA beginners meeting that was our first meeting, and we still maintain that. I think it's good for people if they're alcoholic, like myself, coming into a meeting where somebody could be drunk in the meeting. That might freak out a lot of people. But for me, I'd be sitting beside that guy in a bar anyway, so I could understand. So I'm all for those types of meetings, at the Salvation Army or wherever they happen to be. I like those. I really into those meetings. and in general.
Do you want to
But
tell people about the conference that you're having in Dublin that
I do.
yeah, I'm going to. I'm excited about going to Trinity College in Dublin.
Well, thank you for
And
bringing that up. Yes,
yeah,
Jen.
no, what let's share it. Yeah, and share the
Yeah,
link.
I will. I'll put it in the chat. But first of
Yeah.
all, I'd like to share about Jen's new book, which is coming out on March 18th. And on March 17th, which happens to be St. Patrick's Day, Jan is going to be speaking for the Friendly Circle Berlin and about her new book. And I like that it's the embodied exercises.
Yeah.
I can see workbook groups. You know, there is a polyvagal group that a lot of our members are in. Yes,
Yeah.
they
Yeah,
meet
that's great.
a few times a week. There's a few of them here actually,
Yeah.
and they're mostly 12-step. You know, they're kind of an open group like us. And I can see we have numerous book studies. We have a book study of C. Sykes and Dick Schwartz and there are three writers. The IFS for Addictions book.
Yeah.
Martha Sweezy is the other writer.
Yes, that's
We have
right.
a book
Sean,
study.
can you put a link to that book, Cesa's book? Cease has been a guest on Embodied Dialogues
That's
for
right.
those
Yeah,
listening. You can
I've
look it
watched
up.
it too. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen
she's
it.
great. I'm so excited to meet her in person at
Well, yeah,
yeah, that's going to be fun in Dublin. And that
yeah.
is May, right? May
That's
is the
May
Dublin.
23rd through the 25th in Dublin at Trinity College. And I'm in Dublin right now, actually,
Oh,
working on that and doing the
great.
logistics and all that. I was an event planner in my past life, so that's kind of what I
That's
like doing,
handy.
you know.
Yeah.
That's but anyway, so yes, Jan will be joining us. Jan will be presenting on Saturday, May 24th in the morning session, 9 to 12. C. Sykes will be presenting May 23rd, and Dick Schwartz will be joining her
Oh,
via,
good.
yeah, he's going to come in via Zoom and do a
Zoom. Great.
30-minute talk and intro to Cease. And yeah, we have a lot going on all 3 days. We have Tian Dayton. She'll be there on the Sunday, the 25th of May.
That's
And
wonderful.
that's all live at Trinity College Dublin, and it'll all be available via Zoom. It'll be 2 Zoom channels, 8 hours a day, simultaneous programming in 2 theaters. So it's a major program. You'll see. I'll
Yeah,
put it in the chat. Yeah,
it
and
is. It's
we keep the
wonderful.
so we keep it affordable too because we really built it as being a resource for the recovery community and
Yeah.
bringing people in from the psychotherapeutic community who have an understanding, you know, like yourself, an appreciation of what we do in the 12-step world and the recovery world. And then that builds this trust between all of us, the academics, the psychotherapists, the people in recovery. You know, it's just,
I love it.
we don't need to be spread out in different silos all over the place. We just
No,
mix it
no,
all up.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that, Patrick. I'm really
I
excited
think
about it.
I think the disease model that you talk about too comes more out of the rehab business, the business of rehabs, and the business of rehabs, and insurance companies and government regulators, rather than us sitting in AA meetings. I mean,
I
I've never
agree.
sat in an AA meeting and had a discussion about the disease model. I couldn't even explain it to you, to be honest. We're more interested in addiction recovery rather than we know we got it.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
that. Thank you,
yeah,
Patrick.
yeah. Thanks.
I love
But
you
I think
can
you're right in what you say about it, that it can be a stigma attached to that. That
yes,
we could
yeah.
lose, you know, we need to change that up.
Yeah, and to really honor the body, the wisdom of the body, that bodies are busy trying to help us survive.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
what addictions do. They help us to survive when we don't feel safe.
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
wonderful.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
so
you. Thank you, Jen.
much. You can really feel in Patrick's energy, right? There's this sense of welcoming. It reminds me of in the whole psychotherapy world, you know, how there's this one and this one's better than that one. And we're saying, no, let's bring them all in, all get into the room together because different pathways will resonate with different people, or different leaders will resonate with different people, and it's all good, right? Yeah. So, Robert and Elizabeth, I'm going to introduce you together. I'm really excited about this. Robert and Elizabeth and I go way back to before I was even part of the Polyvagal Institute, before I wrote my first book, I guess. I was running groups. No, I'd already written it.
You'd already
Oh,
written.
so it was right at the beginning then when I was connecting with Polyvagal Institute back then. But I hadn't started maybe the training program yet. But you were in a group that I did called, what was it called?
Shifting Bad Habits.
Shifting Bad Habits. Yeah, that's right.
And in
Yeah.
fact, I saw Anne on you made a webinar out of your book. And I got so excited. I read the book and I wanted to do the webinar. And I saw Anne when you did the focusing and you dropped the word addict into your body. And it was like, oh my God, that's very powerful. So I remember you, Anne.
That's right. We did. We did that again too. I think we did the same demo with the Weekend University, dropping the word addict down into the body. And Anne was so generous in sharing that experience.
But
Yeah.
that was not the same demo. There was a felt
Yeah.
shift that was
Yes.
just heartwarming to see.
Huge, right?
Yeah. So tell us about how what you want to share, how you're using your focusing accountability partnership, or talk to us about. Yeah, we want to know.
Well, maybe I'll start because I guess I want to connect it to my 12-step recovery experiences, which is I've been in 12-step recovery for eating and for alcohol for 16 years. And I was a success in AA. I was not a success in OA in the sense that I was not able to stay abstinent and I couldn't understand. I was doing everything I was supposed to do. I did Herb K, Patrick, I did 2 years worth of step work with him. I really went to many meetings. And then I found Jan's book and I started reading it and I realized this thing about the nervous system. And I thought, oh, this so speaks to me. And so I joined your group. And then Robert and I happened to be in the same group. And I missed having a sponsor. I really, though I'd had some not so positive experiences. I love the 12 steps. I'm with you, Patrick. It's a lot about the meetings can be very different from the actual spiritual experience of living the steps. And I felt like I wanted more accountability, like I have in recovery. And so I really liked Robert a lot. And he was a little intimidating, as I've said, but I asked him at some point if he'd like to be an accountability partner, because I'd read in your book that we need to have a daily accountability partner. And I already had a focusing partner, but I thought, well, let me try this. And so you, Robert, responded yes. And this was about 2 years ago? Right?
Yeah, 2 years and now 3 weeks, I think. But who's counting?
I love it.
But we use a lot of what you presented, which is the 4 circles and the 7 Fs. And it's such a wonderful, and focusing, it's such a wonderful accompaniment to recovery work because it really takes me more into my body than I could get into in recovery. And so I feel like they're married really well.
Yeah, I remember, Elizabeth, when you were in a group that I was running and you had this experience of that early soothing behavior as a little girl, and how in a focusing way it connected to the food issues. And I remember you saying, I never connected this. In all those years, I never connected this to the trauma back there. And how profound that was for you. And it really impacted you, right? Being able to make that back there connection. Yeah.
Yes, very deeply. And it really helped me understand those baby parts in an IFS way.
Yes.
So anyway, I'll shift over to you, Robert.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm just so impressed by each of the 4 of you. Jan, I've watched how you present the model evolve.
You have.
And this latest presentation is just so explicit and succinct, and something's happening there every time you tell it.
Yeah, I tell it a lot these days, but it's good. It's
Thank
good.
you for your service.
Yeah, but thank you for noticing that, because
Yeah.
it helps to hear that.
Yeah. And Anne, this is the first time I heard about you being shunned and shamed in your 12-step meeting. And I know those meetings, they're kind of fundamentalist. They're almost like traditional. All you need is a book. You don't need therapy. You don't need a pill. If the program isn't working good, because you're not working the program, you're not working hard enough. And it's just a total shaming kind of thing. They don't mean to do that, but that's what happens. And for a lot of people, I worked in treatment programs for 16 years, and I could watch some people being helped, but some people really being harmed at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a shadow. Patrick, I can't tell you how excited I am to be. I was part of your community. I entered recovery when I heard Claudia Black speak about adult children of alcoholics back in the 80s. And then to see her still in the field, still presenting. She did a program with the Friendly Circle. And she is so inspiring. And she has just kept growing. It's just amazing. And she said something about her approach to codependency that she, fully uses the 12 steps, but she's added 5 additional steps that she finds really helpful, especially working with codependency. And I sort of made this connection that we've got the 12 steps, we've got plus Claudia's additional 5, and now we've got 20 embodied practices.
Yeah.
And it's doing the practice, like working the steps or doing the practice, that's what makes the difference. Not just learning about it, but actually doing it. And of course, doing it in partnership, doing it in community makes all the difference. I can hear you, Patrick, when you talk about, there's a 12 steps thing that says, principles before personalities. Meetings, you get a lot of personalities, and you can lose the principles very quickly, getting caught up in sympathetic and dorsal states. Yeah. So
Go ahead.
I want to say more about my relationship with Elizabeth, which is very much an evolving thing. We just this week we had our first serious rupture in 2 years.
Wow.
But because Elizabeth is an incredible couples therapist, she knows all about repair, and I know enough about repair to pay attention. And so we're very hopeful that, like Stan Tatkin talks about how couples really have to sort of develop a sign language so they can say, you're doing it again, without actually saying you're doing it again, embarrassing each other. I look forward to doing that with Elizabeth. But I've been, actually, the thought that I most want to talk about right now is the mystery of addiction. It is a mystery. And, in Bill W.'s day, the big book, it was considered an allergy. And that was a useful metaphor. And then, the 1990s, it became the disease model, which again is a very useful metaphor, I think. And now we have the Jan's model, which we talk about it as an adaptation. And I find that an incredibly useful model. But I can assume that these models will continue to present themselves as we continue to go deeper and deeper into the mystery of addiction and the fact that people heal, that healing happens. And that's also an incredibly mysterious process.
Yeah.
But I think each approach has a lot to offer. And again, this is why I'm so impressed with Patrick and what you're doing there, the openness that you have created.
Yeah.
If you haven't been to the website or you haven't been to the YouTube channel, there's such a rich layer of resources, years and years of speakers. So I would invite you to just take a look at the website and see what's available there. You'll probably find something that speaks to you.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I've been coming to your meetings, Patrick. I've never been to a meeting like yours. I've never been to a meeting where people are talking about how are they regulating their nervous systems.
Now that's going to change more and more, right?
It's like, oh my God, tell me more. I mean, reading this.
Well, I think Deb Dana first spoke at Berlin, and
Yes, she did. Yeah,
she did, and then I did, and
yeah.
somebody. Have you had other people doing polyvagal stuff?
But not
Not
meeting.
Polyvagal, no.
Yeah.
So if you can think of somebody you'd like to bring along, Jen.
I don't know. I'll think
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
really new in the polyvagal world, and that's really. But I knew that I was touching into something here and then when I met Patrick, I'm like, okay, this is it. This is what we're gonna do. So I was like, you have to invite me to Dublin.
Yes, well, I think it's a great fit. I really do. I mean,
Yeah,
it
it's
aligns very, very
wonderful.
well with what we do.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So I can see that I have to put my glasses on to read the number, 65 or 6 chats in there, people going back and forth like crazy. There's still 97 people here with us live. And Rashawn, there's like, I don't know how many people signed up. But let's go to our gallery view now, Rashawn. And we can interact with our group. And also, I think it would be great if we could send the chat out to all the people that signed up as well, because I know there's probably lots of really great information in there. Here we go, back to gallery view. So nice to see everybody's faces. Lots of people here that I know. Oh, Suzanne Noel, you're here. Hello. Come and say hi. Come and tell people about the wonderful work that you do. And did you
Hi,
put your book in the chat?
hi. I'm a little nervous, but it's
Are
just a
you?
wonderful. I am. I'm getting dysregulated.
Oh, well, look at me. Look at me. It's so lovely to see you.
Okay, I'm gonna just say that my work is crossing the 12 steps with focusing. And so for each step, I introduce a resource and then the felt sense of the step and then welcoming what could be like recovery for each step. And I love the work. I love the model. I'm once again working in an alcohol and drug treatment center, and the clients just love it because they get their own symbol, their own felt sense and handle for the addictive process as well as recovery. And it's just wonderful. And I'm so glad to be here. I was in the Berlin group for a little while. I don't know why I left. I need to return. I loved it. And I just so always wonderful to see you, Jan, and
Yeah,
hear you. And
you
I don't know, I'm
too.
nervous. I should feel safe with you, but
Well, there's a lot of people here, Suzanne. But Suzanne and I know each other pretty well from the focusing world. We ran a week long together, and Suzanne does beautiful work, just beautiful work. So, and you took one of my courses, so you know about the Bell-Sense polyvagal model.
took one of
Yeah.
your courses, taken one of my the project.
That's
course.
right. That's right. You helped me to, I was in your group. You helped me to start writing my first book. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So wonderful. Glad you're here. Okay, let's look in the chat. And who would like to talk to people? There's a background noise, is there? No, it's okay. Anybody want to come and talk to one of us? Oh, come on.
And I just want to remind people you can raise your virtual hand.
Well, there we go.
Do that. Great.
Sandra. Excellent. Hello, Sandra. Have you been here with us before? Do I know you?
Well, I don't know that you know me. I was at the Recovery Reimagined conference last year, and I'm thrilled to hear so many common threads in the work that I'm trying to put together. I've got trying to post it, but I have too much text, so I'm sort of editing out an announcement because I'm meeting weekly with a group of people who have been looking at Ingrid Clayton's work from the conference last year with CPTSD and fawning, and working on reworking a workshop that I did specifically for Workaholics Anonymous called Rebalancing Your Life that talks about how I've used the information about polyvagal and nonviolent communication and various things to help me recover in a
Beautiful.
more science-based, trauma-informed way. And so I'm excited to keep networking, and I'll be at the conference in Dublin.
Oh,
We
great.
got our tickets for that and have our hotel reservations, so we just need our flights now. So um,
Come and say hi.
yeah, so and I love that you brought in the highly sensitive
Yeah.
aspect of things. I think also I'm trained as a counselor for vocational rehabilitation, and although I worked in administration and staff development training and so forth. So I also see a lot of people with ADHD and other, learning disabilities and that sort of thing in the rooms as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. That is huge.
So, that's sort of, and then, yeah, so, all of this work, it's about emotional maturity, it's about emotional sobriety. And the question I had, it was a little fine-grained and specific from the brain section, and I'm trying to find it in the chat, but it's kind of way up there. So when you talked about the frontal cortex, it kind of resonated for me with the term that I've learned in a book called The Power of Awe, called the default mode network.
Yes,
Which is, I think,
absolutely.
for me, that resonated with addiction and compulsion, because it's like, it's the part of my brain that knows where to put my keys, and I don't have to think about it, but it can get me in trouble. I think the paradox that you talked about is very much in that vein of, it's great to be able to form habits, but then if you do it unconsciously and you don't bring neuroception and interoception and conscious choice to the matter, you can be, completely hijacked by the default mode network. So
Have a look at Rashawn. Can you put the YouTube one that I did with Ruth Lanius? I don't know if you saw that, Sandra, but have a look at that embodied dialogue that I did with Ruth Lanius. We talk about the default mode network. Yeah.
great.
Thank
So
you.
I'll click with that and just inviting people to join. I'm in Pacific time, so it's in about an hour and a half. We'll be doing Fawn Club. So anybody who's sounds intrigued by that, you're welcome
I
to.
love it. I love it. Thank you so much. And come and say hi to me in Dublin. Be great. Thank you. Kimber, hello. I remember you from a week ago or something. We had a chat.
Thanks, Janet.
Hello. Hi.
I just took a 36-year cake the week before last in my home AA group, and so I haven't heard anything about this. Is not new, but the piece I want to bring to this discussion was I got introduced to polyvagal theory and then did a year-long thing with Deb Dana, and when she told me about dorsal vagal, I was blown away. I didn't know. And she says she characterizes people as having sort of a go-to place. You go to sympathetic
Default. Yeah.
Default. And so dorsal vagal is my default. But I didn't know that. And when I discovered that, and it really landed in my body, I had a feeling of about 40 pounds dropping from my shoulders, because I felt so ashamed of my behavior, of my cowardice as a man, my turning away from a stressful situation and running away and dissociating and disconnecting from myself. I thought there was something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And when I realized it wasn't my choice. It was something that allowed me to survive.
Our bodies do. Yeah.
It was a brilliant strategy, actually.
Yes.
When I reflected back from the time I was a little boy, it was a brilliant freaking strategy.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, way to go. And rather than, oh, what a wimp.
Yeah. So, Kimber, what you're experiencing is what I'm calling these moments of liberation. It's what
Exactly.
frees people profoundly. You can see in Kimber's body, right? It frees you from the shame when you realize this is just what bodies do.
So I wanted to put that into the discussion. Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much for illustrating that so beautifully. Yeah, it's very true. This is what happens all the time when I do this work. And so why wouldn't I love doing it, right? Yeah, beautiful. Cynthia?
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you so much for doing this. We don't know each other, but I actually received a scholarship from you to do your long-term group. So I came to you after having a toe amputation. So I'm very much have been very connected to my body. Believe it or not, I'm a yoga teacher and psychotherapist, but I also have had food issues my whole life. And the 12 steps haven't worked for me. And I know they say, it works if you work it. I'm now in Herb K's group, and I'm finding it very cognitive, and it doesn't really seem to be it doesn't feel like a fit, although I badly want it to be a fit. So I guess my question really is, I don't know if I said I did Deb Dana's group. And I love this model. It seems to bring together so much of what I've been thinking and studying for many years. And I guess my question is where do I go to from here? There's
Well,
so
you're
much.
welcome to join us in April. So the groups, the community practice groups, I think, Rashawn, you put a link in, maybe put it in again. If you check out the Polyvagal Institute website, they're listed there. And are they on my website yet, Rashawn? The community practice groups? We're just starting to talk about this now. Really just today is really the beginning. But you'll find it on the community practice groups on the Polyvagal Institute website, and there will be several notices going up after this until April 16th. And that's when we will start the groups that Robert and Elizabeth will be leading the breakout rooms, and I'll be taking people through the 20 embodied practices through the 20 weeks. And it's every week, and it's for 2 hours, and you get a focusing accountability partner. And also we'll have the audio, which I did myself. So it'll be me with you in my voice and also with my new book. So I
Okay.
hope you come and join us.
Thank you very much.
There will be some scholarships available as well, but that's where we'll really be running through this particular model. That's the beginning of it. And then for those of you that are curious about learning about how to use it in your work, the training that I do, we're starting
Any
again.
help?
Sorry?
Why not?
Oh, somebody's talking in the background. Those courses start next September. And those are listed on the Polyvagal Institute website as well. And all the training that we do, we are in focusing partnerships. And so people are doing their own inner work as well as learning how to be with people. Okay. Who is next? How do you pronounce your name? Poya?
Hi, it's Pooja.
Pooja. Hello. Where are you?
I am in Delhi, India. Interesting you should ask that because that's exactly what my question is about.
Okay.
So, the only resources I've found over here are 12-step meetings. I am an ACA member, and there are various meetings across the world, thankfully, that Zoom has made available for me. But as for even IFS, let alone polyvagal stuff, I don't find many resources locally, or I mean anywhere else in India, not just my city. So I was just wondering if there are any tools that any of the admins here are able to share, or any or even think of some prospective workshops that can be done in the region. Yeah, maybe like a food for thought. So
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
a good food for thought, Pooja. Rashan, I know that we have some students that are in India, but I don't know about Delhi. We could look and see if we could maybe connect you up with someone. You're not looking for training as a counselor or therapist, you're looking for services, right?
Well, as of now, yes, I must see
Yeah.
before I
Yeah.
can share it.
Yeah, okay. We'll do our best but if anybody else knows of services that are available in Delhi, please put it in the chat. Derek. Derek, are you in Dublin?
Yeah, I am. Yep. Don't worry. I'm part of the FCB crew. You know what I mean? It's just that like I get drafted in. Patrick calls me his pinch hitter for some odd reason. Is that I suppose like since I've got a panel of 12 steppers here, you know, which is great, right? And I'm a recent convert from a 12 stepper myself in AA, right? And it's been transformative polyvagal. Okay. And as much as I can, because like as somebody else, my natural go-to is dorsal, whatever. But people have bad experiences in AA. Now I'll just talk about AA for just a second, right? Because now I look at it from a different lens. And what is it? Oh, I'm polyvagal informed. So what state am I? All that good stuff, right? So I just think the more extreme meetings of AA, or probably any 12-step group, they're all just unsafe sympathetic running around like maniacs. And if I'm in dorsal or whatever, if I'm in this state, you know what I mean, and you're in that state, we can't communicate. The best we can do is have a truce. You see what I mean? If unsafe sympathetic is going to come to me in a bit unsafe dorsal, go rah 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 rah, do all the blah blah blah. Unsafe dorsal in a sort of a shutdown mode is going, I want to dig a hole and die, right?
Yes.
But so all when people talk about a bad meeting, and there is a difference between the 12-step program, as Patrick will allude to, because I'm a great advocate, saved my life, the people in the fellowship and the meetings. But it will always come down to the simple thing of I'm polyvagal informed, become informed. Oh, my state is X, your state is Y, and we're not going to communicate today, really. But if we don't, and I understand within AA, it's very cerebral. It's all about stories. Tell me your story, 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 story. Nobody talks about state. What state are you in? So by definition, the 12-step program, 12 steps, is a story-based cerebral process, which is of fuck all use in the polyvagal world, in my humble opinion. But anyway, but what does the panel think about most 12-step programs, which I go to the extreme meetings? You know what I'm talking about. The Talibans of your respective orders, right? They're just all unsafe sympathetic, running around like maniacs, being unsafe sympathetic. Throw it over to the panel. What do you all think of my hypothesis?
Okay, panel, don't look at me. Patrick.
Well, yes. I mean, yeah, I think Derek's from Dublin, you know. So- I got out of there when I was 16 years old. You know, I lived there for a year before I left. But we moved there when I was 15. From another part of Ireland, but I can understand. Yeah, no, but I mean, I go to Dublin meetings and I love them. They do tell stories. He's right, but they're good storytellers, so they crack me up. You know, I love the stories. See, I love the stories. I like humor, and then some of these guys tell great stories. When I first came into AA, I didn't read the first 164 pages of the book. I read all the stories. I thought this, and I used to love listening to these guys tell stories, you know, and try to outdo each other. Like I'm the worst of the worst, you know, with their prison stories and all that stuff. And I found them hilarious, you know. And then outside the meeting, you'd have fun with them, and so you know, I enjoy it. Yeah, you get people on any given day can get really dysregulated, but I kind of like, you know, it depends where I'm at. It's a test. How am I reacting to all this chaos and confusion that goes on sometimes at meetings? Well, it's up to me to I got a gift, There's a gift that comes out of doing the 12 steps. They say you are placed in a position of neutrality. That's right after the 9th step. It's in between 9 and 10. And it says that you are placed in a position of neutrality. We cease fighting everything and everyone because we've been placed. We've been placed. It's a beautiful, gentle approach in a position of neutrality. And it says that we get there without any thought or effort on our own part. I mean, that blew my mind when I didn't understand it when I first read it. I thought, isn't it all about thought and effort? No, there's something else. There's a grace and there's a beauty in it, that I enjoy. So then I'm in this chaos of dysregulated people. Maybe I should be really practicing patience.
Oh, I think Patrick
It's
froze.
just the way I see it, I don't mind being in it. I don't mind being in the middle of it.
I think what you're saying there, Patrick, I didn't know about that position of neutrality, but I think what you're saying there is that it's recognizing the capacity to actually be able to ground yourself in a ventral state. And then from that state, chaos can be happening around you,
Yeah.
but it's not taking you over and dysregulating you. So
Yeah.
that's
I
interesting.
learned it.
I didn't
I
know
learned
that.
it from the business I'm in too. I was in the business of events, like
Yeah,
huge chaotic events with a lot of things going on at once, and I had to manage a lot of people.
yeah.
So if I stood away, I used to practice meditation going into it beforehand.
Well, this is the
And
pause
yeah, exactly.
and clearing space.
Because you're in total chaos. And there's
Yes.
thousands of people going in every direction all
Yeah.
around you. And you got to
Yeah.
kind of focus on what's going on.
Yeah. And it is valuable to be able to really name that and then also to be able to point out ways to teach how to get there.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
used to do with I used to train guys, in management. So men
Beautiful.
and women. Yeah. So and I learned it in AA. I'm telling you, I got
Okay,
better at it. I got way better at my job.
Mm-hmm.
And because I learned these tools, and I was placed in maybe that position of neutrality without any thought or effort on my part.
Well,
That's
maybe
the
it was, but
spiritual. That's the
maybe
spiritual.
it was a lot of thought and effort, but not so conscious. It was more
Yeah,
how you were developing and growing as a person.
yeah. There's another level of consciousness I feel that we reach. That when that's what they're talking about, because it's not ego consciousness. It's not
Right.
me doing it.
Yeah.
I find
Mhm.
myself in that position,
Yes.
oh boy, how did that happen? Often people say that we notice in newcomers the changes in them before they notice it in themselves.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Beautiful.
Dan,
Okay.
What this
Yes,
is,
Elizabeth.
I was just going to say, and it's so interesting to hear Patrick's response, because I would say, in listening to your question, that it sounds like for Patrick, hearing stories is really regulating, and he likes it a lot. For the next person, it might not be. And
Mhm.
I think it's so great to know our nervous systems and know what works for us. And I mean, Patrick, you're talking about the way you regulate yourself before you go into these giant meetings, to meditate, to pause. I have found that I have to work with my body a lot. And particularly since I've been working with you, I work, and then we definitely get placed in a position of neutrality through a lot of effort. Getting through the 9th step is a lot of effort on our part. The result is not up to us. But if that's not enough, if we need something more, then I think that your embodied practices and really working with the body can be very regulating for a lot of people who may not find that kind of regulation.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just want to make a plug for that.
Yeah. I think
a-
that's important.
and there's something I'd like to say about this,
Yes,
which
Robert.
is the spiritual dimension of the 12 steps. It begins with a surrender to the mystery. And is the effort involved in that surrendering? Yeah, every day there's another thing to, okay, this is what is, this is what's going on. The equanimity that you talk about, you call it neutrality. That's the gift of grace, and that's sort of the flow state, with stillness, and to know that it exists, to know that it's possible, that you can be in a crazy meeting and you're not crazy, because you have this connection with this stillness, this spaciousness.
Yeah.
That's
it. That's the sweet spot. That's when you know you can be in charge of yourself, right? Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a great conversation. There's not like a skip in it. Nicole, are you with us? Hello. Hi.
I just put a cough in my mouth. Thank you so much. I work with Patrick and am an FCB enthusiast. I just wanted to, and my beloved sponsee she's getting a master's degree in everything you write about. I'm metaphorically. I just wanted to give a really big shout out and a thank you, because I can't tell you how many times I've read something and it in 12-step, in therapy, in everything. And it's like, just come into your body, just breathe and come into your body. And I feel so unseen, because I'm like, if I could do that, I wouldn't need a fucking 12-step program. And so just to have the conversation include, like, are you at war with your body? Yeah, I'm a trauma survivor. It's a journey. So oftentimes I read things that make this huge assumption.
Yes, yes.
That I just don't know how to get into my body. I'm like, no, and we're not that much different in age. I remember, when The Courage to Heal came out, it was huge.
Yeah.
I've been in ACA since 1993. So I, like a lot of us, are like, I owe 12-step my life, and I love it, and I want to get back to it as much as possible. And I'm also very excited about all of this conversation that's happening. But I also just want to specifically, since I have this opportunity, I may never see you again, to let you know how much this means to me. That this conversation around, okay, are you afraid to go back into your body? I survived being smart and living in my head. Yes, I have dealt with health issues.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But again, and apparently my dog also wants to thank you. So I just wanted to one-on-one thank you
thank
for
you
everything
so much.
you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And actually, Nicole, in the new book, and Robert pointed this out too to me, that I spend a fair amount of time at the beginning really getting people ready to begin to imagine the idea of pausing. That is really scary when you don't live in your body. And then to start, one of the first practices is just to start noticing something in the room. So we go very gently and titrate that process, because in a dorsal state, of course, we're not living in the body because it's about survival. And as I said, that's a gift to the body. An absolute gift. How would those young women have survived the torture?
Exactly.
Don't understand that. You're right, they don't. But I think there is a growing awareness in the trauma community to not make any assumptions and to get better educated about what the dorsal vagus really feels like and looks like and how it functions.
I'm just going to do a Christmas list. So Patrick, you know what I'm going to say. I'm telling you, Jan, you see Sykes, Friendly Circle Berlin, because I've done all of that. All of the work that's out there, but there is this like meaning like being in the room and everything, but the core trauma wound, the recovery trauma, IFS, like that incredible divine triangle would be just amazing. So I'm just putting it out there. Thank you very much.
Well, it's coming. Are you coming to Dublin?
I have health issues. I've been living with chronic health issues, so I can't travel right now, but I work on the Dublin stuff.
Okay. Well, it's wonderful to see you, and come and find me again. Come and hang out with us. Embodied Dialogues is a free offering almost every month. Next month, do you know who we have? When is it? March what, Rashawn? March 6th, we have Steve Porges. A free hour with Steve Porges. So, yeah, come and find us. We're going to do one more because it's going to be 2:00. You know, it feels like we should do this again. It feels like it's really, we're moving into this, and we're going to do it in Dublin, and it will be online too, Patrick. So, but it feels like we need to do this again. Let's kind of just keep that in mind, to come together again and really keep going, right? And we could say, like, what's the next step, folks?
Well, I've written the 12 steps for polyvagal. I'll send it to you.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, you send it to me. That'll be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's our next one.
Okay.
Our next one. Okay, Patrick.
Well, it's a project, you know, people can add to it, you know, change
Of
it.
course, we always add and change and argue
Yeah.
and all of that.
There you
Brilliant.
go.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, one more question. Monty? How do you say your name?
It's Moonty.
Monty. Hello from Boston.
Hi. Hi, Jan. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for this amazing group. I'm new to Polyvagal. This is my second week. And I feel like for me, it came from my story generally in 12 steps. I started initially in 2020 with CODA groups. And as a very studious person, I went in and dove into the steps, and I did really well. And from step 1 through 3, step 4 is when my body refused to do anything. It completely collapsed. I got backlash. I got very intense emotions that put me in bed for a while. And I tried again, and I would get back up and try. And I thought that was the only solution. And I realized.
Can you say what step 4 is for some people who don't know?
So step 4 is basically an inventory of what they call the character defects. So that word in itself was very triggering for me. And I knew I had PTSD and trauma. I just didn't know how my body would respond to it. But the thing that kept happening is collapsing and completely being in bed for a couple of days, sometimes weeks. So I put it aside and I looked into other things, and I knew that my body needed something. And unfortunately, all the medications that I tried for PTSD were not helping me. And because I was exposing so many memories and so many different things that I've been hiding and suppressing for so many years, it really had an intense reaction. I didn't know how to regulate. And eventually, I kept going to meetings, because the thing about 12 steps for me is, for the first time in my life, I found a group that I can talk to. So the group was the effect that I really continued to gain from, but I put the steps aside. In one of the meetings, there was a gentleman who was a veteran, and he said that he wasn't able to do the steps until he got a PTSD treatment for his body. And it was an injection called a dual sympathetic reset. And I immediately looked for it, and it was an injection in the sympathetic, in the stellate ganglion cell. It's a block, an anesthesiology block for pain medication or pain management. And they noticed by accident that people who come in for pain medication for the neck and the upper back or upper spine, that their symptoms of PTSD would go away to a significant amount. So I applied for a scholarship. Of course, it's not covered by insurance. And I got funding for it in June 2023. And I had an insane shift in my nervous system. It was literally a reset. For the first time in my life, I sleep without nightmares. I did not know that sleep does not include nightmares. I thought you sleep, you get a nightmare. And for the first time in my life, I was able to sleep. I was able to navigate my emotions. I had more capacity for my emotions. And I'm not saying that it was just the injection, but it was significantly that effect of it. And I had also a support system that I developed from the 12 steps. I continued to go. I talked to a lot of people when I went. There was the spiritual element of it. I did 2 years of IFS before that. And now I'm finally able to do 12-step programs. Now I'm in a 12-step, step 4. And since I arrived in step 4, I don't know why, something kept calling me like, okay, you did the mind, you did the spirit, let's seek the body. Like you can't do you can't answer these questions and then just let your heart wide open. You need to do something. So I've been intrigued by polyvagal. So I've been in the rooms for the past week and a half or so, and I'm so happy that I landed here. And by the way, the interesting thing about IFS, my first part that was the loudest that showed up in my first session kept saying the word the body, the body, the body. Tell the therapist I'm here. I'm telling you, you have to take care of the body. That was that was 2 years or 3 years ago. And she kept coming in, and she was also a very feminine part. She looked like she was 16 or, and she kept telling me about my womanly, my feminine body. And she had her own wisdom to tell me, like, if you're going to do anything, even here in IFS or the steps, please take care of the body. So I feel like I've come full circle here. I'm so grateful. Like, I feel I got the spiritual element. I really have a great connection with the higher power, with my God. And I do feel like the element of the intellect is I have it, and IFS has a little bit of both. The thing that was missing was the body, and I'm grateful to be here. And I just wanted to share that because, yes, the injection helped me a lot, but I do feel that I want to continue what I'm doing with a wholesome experience. And I want, when I do any step, so I just started answering the questions about 2 weeks ago, and a lot of memories are coming up, new memories from like when I was 4. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to give a little bit of an IFS gentleness to it. So if I have enough self energy, I sit with the part that, had the experience. And I wanted to think about adding something physical to match the energy of that emotion. So I was thinking of dance.
Come and find out about working with the felt sense.
Yes, I would love that. That's why I'm really happy that I'm here. So I was thinking of doing things on my own, but I'm glad that I found these type of ideas. Yeah.
And please, I think it would be really interesting for Steve Porges to comment on this treatment that you had. So hopefully you can come and join us in March.
Yeah,
we've gone over. We never go over.
Thank you.
Never go over on embodied dialogues, but today we did, and I think it tells us something, that we're really onto something here. And so I'm going to follow up with Patrick on his polyvagal 12 steps, and we'll do it again. We'll do it again. Please do take good care of yourselves. I hope we see all of you and in March 6th. And then who's coming in April? I forget, but you'll find it on the on my website and also PVI. Do you remember who it is, Rashawn? Somebody interesting.
I think it's Kristen or Kristen.
Kristen Toth, who you would love, Monty, because she will do lots of embodiment stuff. We'll talk a lot about focusing and felt sensing. She's wonderful. So there's a lot of free stuff available as well. Look it around on my website and also PVI. Thank you, everybody. Special thanks to the guests who came and give your time and energy and all of that. It was really wonderful. Thank you so much. It sure is. It feeds me and helps me to keep doing the crazy number of things that I'm doing right now.
That's great work, Jen.
Thank you so
Glad
much.
you're doing it.
Really appreciate it.
Oh,
Much love
hi,
to
Katerina.
everyone.
Hello. Hello. Okay. Be well, everybody. See you around.
See you soon. See you soon, March
See
17th.
you soon. See you March 17th as well, Patrick. Yeah. But
All
come
right.
for Steve on March 6th. Okay.
Yeah. I'll be looking
Thanks,
out for
everyone.
that one. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you.
sure. It'll be wonderful. Okay. Bye,
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert and Elizabeth and Anne.
Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Sean, do you think we can get a copy of the chat out as well as the recording? Yeah. So look for the chat as well, because there's lots of information in there. It's I don't know, 90 something little messages in there to see. So goodbye, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Be
Thank
well
you.
and safe. Bye-bye.